From the headquarters of Public Access TV in Iowa City and in collaboration with the Iowa City Community School District, I would welcome you, our viewers, to a new episode of Education Exchange. My name is Hani Al-Qadi, and one of the hosts here, and another host is Elwi Apo Harris. And we are welcoming tonight a very significant and important guest, and that's Matt Degner, our Assistant Superintendent in the Iowa City Community School District. Welcome, Matt, and I will leave you to a question from our friend here, Elwi.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Matt. I am very new at this guest hosting and learning about the school system. And so I just would like to start off by asking you who you are and where you come from, your background in the school system, and also your personal life, if you don't mind.
Sure, you bet, you bet. Well, thank you both for having me this evening. And my background starts in Traer, Iowa. I won't give you the full story, but from a very small rural town in Iowa. I graduated with 48 students in my high school class. So ending up here in Iowa City is quite a different experience than what I grew up with. But I'm married. My wife, Kate, is a professor at St. Ambrose University. And we have 3 children that attend Iowa City Community Schools. Well, 2 of them are at Lucas Elementary, and next year our 3rd will start in kindergarten there. But my education career began in the Williamsburg Community School District after I graduated from University of Northern Iowa, and I started as a social studies teacher in Williamsburg, and then had the opportunity to move into an administrative role there as an assistant junior high principal. And after that, went to Bettendorf High School and was an associate principal at Bettendorf High School, and really enjoyed my time there in Bettendorf and learned a lot of great lessons about leadership and I think who I was as a leader. And then had the opportunity to come here to Iowa City and serve at Southeast Junior High for 2 years as principal of Southeast Junior High. Really love that school. It still has a special place to me there, and some of the good work we started there I think we're still continuing to see. And then have an opportunity now to work closer with Superintendent Murley and our board of directors as assistant superintendent. So I've been in 3 different districts, grew up in a very small district, and it kind of feels like I've continued to move into larger districts as I went along, which is interesting to me because, or impactful to me because I feel like I have an opportunity to impact more students and lives of more kids. And I think that's the thing I always try to remember is you got into it because you wanted to help students and you wanted to really believe and empower people to know that education is that equalizer, and it can be, and it just takes good, committed people to do that. So that's kind of my purpose, and my story, an abbreviated version for how I got to where we are today, to be sitting here with you guys. Absolutely.
It sounds like you've really moved up the ladder, and correct me if I'm wrong, but would you say that you were, you started off in a small district and then you moved your way up to where you're at now?
Yeah, and I think that's really a credit to the people I've just had the opportunity to work with. I think you work with good people, and those people have always invested in me and helped me, kind of take the next step or encourage you to take the next step. And that's what I do for, people here, is that when people are ready to do something else or have the skills and abilities to do something else, that we're putting them in a position to be able to do that. And so I've been really fortunate in the people that have impacted me all the way from a student in school to, as a professional in school throughout that. So it's been a kind of an interesting journey. You take some education classes in college, think someday I'll be a teacher, someday I'll be a principal, someday I'll do the superintendent thing, and sometimes it just doesn't, the timeline, you don't pick the time, right? And you don't pick the timeline on things. So it's happened the way it's happened, and happy to be here in Iowa City.
How about some extracurricular, like sports and
Sure.
activities that you got into?
Yeah, I've always been involved in sports growing up, and my Cubs won the World Series here, so I got to give a little shout out to them. I've been a Cubs fan for a long time and spent a lot of money at Wrigley Field going to watch. Yeah, no Cubs stuff today. I have the Bears. It's a Victory Monday today, so we have the Bears stuff on today. But I think sports in particular, extracurricular activities for kids, I found the value in those, and some skills that maybe you didn't get in the classroom, you were able to get with your teammates or in extracurricular events, in a group setting and some leadership capacity things that you learn there too. So that has been an important part of my life.
Because we know each other on a personal level, can I call you Matt?
You bet.
All right, wonderful. So my section is divided into four, or I divided my questions into four groups. The first one has to do with students. The second one with teacher, professional development, and the progress that you are going to tell our viewers about tonight.
Right.
And the third one related to curriculum and its development, and currently what's happening and what will happen in the near future. And I will finish with the philosophy of the district under the title of the 4 C's, that you will explain to us what it means for the students and the staff and the leadership.
Sure.
So let's start with the student leadership. What do you have in the stack for this?
Yeah, I think when we talk about students, it's kind of tied to some of those other parts we're going to talk about tonight, Hani, I believe. But really with students, I think we need to be thinking about 21st century skills and what are we allowing for our students to be prepared to do that, whether they decide to follow a traditional college 4-year liberal arts track, or do they decide to enter into some kind of a apprenticeship program, or do they decide to pursue a community college route, or some kind of vocational training that way. So I think there's a lot of different avenues our students could take, and we want to have as many of those doors open for them as possible. So then when we talk about students and the abilities they're given to lead or to be active in activities through high school, how do we create a diverse experience that draws on a lot of those interests, that is also realistic for what students will encounter when they leave our walls of public education. And that's the hard part about our system. Sometimes we're not very nimble in our approach, and we have a style of education that's worked for a long time, but I think that now we're also being asked to change, and we're being asked to evolve a little bit along with what our society is demanding from our students when they leave K-12 education. And that's part of our responsibility then as leaders, is to say, how are we designing a system that meets all those demands and giving kids opportunities to be able to pursue that.
How about the engagement of students?
Sure.
You're trying to encourage more involvement of students and their families into the process of their education, right?
Right, exactly. And I think when we talk about student engagement, that's where we go to those skills and what are those 21st century learning skills that students need to get to. And that kind of goes all the way to the end of our program tonight with the 4 C's. But I think when we ask students to be involved and engaged, and we have to have a pretty good reflection on ourselves, and again, what are those experiences we're putting in front of students that do think that school has something to offer them, that this is valuable, that they do believe we have something that is going to lead them to somewhere after we go. And extracurriculars are one way we probably do a really good job with that. We get a lot of students hooked into extracurricular events. But how do we look at our classes and our traditional offerings, or how do we look at even how much student talk versus teacher talk happens in the classroom? And our teachers are great about that. They're constantly asking themselves about reflective on practice and engagement in activities. And when you look at opportunities like the Kirkwood Regional Center that the district's been involved with a lot of the different career academies that students can now pursue, or when we look at STEM and makerspace opportunities for students to do some things in our secondary schools with a more hands-on approach that gives them time to create, to innovate, to do some things that may not be presented to them in a traditional curricula, that is an opportunity for them to go into those spaces and then explore their own learning and kind of extend on maybe some of the things they were introduced to in the classroom. So it's some soft skills that I think are what we're seeing a little pivot or shift in, and what we need to try to make sure we're honing into.
What's new regarding the issue of professional development?
Sure. So
for teachers.
Yeah, with professional development, to get at some of this, what we've talked about is student access to technology is a big one for me. And when we talk about student access to technology, we talk about starting giving all of our students a device. So if they walk in with the device every day, that fundamentally alters the way our classrooms work and operate. So if we're going to do that, then we need to provide our teachers some professional development to how does that classroom look now and how does that classroom feel. Because what they may have relied on a teacher for an answer before, now they could access through their Chromebook or through their iPad, which changes the game, which for a good, I think for the better. But at the same time, teachers necessarily weren't trained or prepared to teach in a classroom setting like that. And so there's some professional development that they ask for, that they would like to receive to be able to do that. So we have pilots going on with teachers learning about blended learning and what that looks like in a rotational model as they approach their classroom. A lot of teachers use Google Classroom to manage workflow of student assignments in and out so they can provide valuable feedback as well to their students, because feedback is a huge impact factor for us in student learning. And so if that allows us to more effectively do some of those from a teaching end, we know learning will be increased as well. So I think technology, like it does in any business or any large organization, is something that we have to continue to make sure we're advancing at the same rate that what the students' experience outside of school looks like.
And how has that worked out for you? Has it been effective?
Sure. And when you asked about kind of past districts I've been in, one thing, in Williamsburg, we did a lot to get prepared for this in a one-to-one environment, and then I left. And we rolled out all the iPads in Bettendorf, and then I left. And so the exciting part I hope to see in Iowa City is kind of seeing that through a little bit. That so if we move towards this end, and then get to look back and see some of those payoffs in Williamsburg and Bettendorf now, I hope the same thing for the kids in Iowa City is that I do think teachers respond positively to it, our students respond positively to it, and that, when we look back 5 years from now and we can say, hey, we gave them this, but look at where we ended up now 5 years later, which I think would be a dramatic shift to what we're doing currently in our classrooms. And we do great things in our classrooms right now. So definitely not undercutting that. It's just I think we could do so much more. There's more opportunities for us. And that ease of access piece is just something our teachers shouldn't have to worry about. They shouldn't have to worry about checking out Chromebooks for their kids if they want them to do an opportunity. That should just be right there as a resource like it would be outside of here. If you wanted to leave this studio today and get on your phone, you're going to have internet access right now. That's the way our classroom should feel too.
Is there ever a concern that the students might have access to things that they shouldn't have access to?
Yes, definitely.
And how do you, right,
Yep.
that was kind of where my mind went.
Yeah, and I think that's a legitimate concern, and the great part about kind of encountering those things in an education setting is that we know kids will make mistakes, right? And that there will be some opportunities for that. But the good thing is when they make mistakes, they're surrounded by adults that can help them learn from those mistakes. So we have some things we do with filtering and some things like that, but then we're also looking at on-task behavior in class, right? And that engagement piece back to that. So are the things we're asking them to do respectful tasks that ask them to be engaged in doing authentic work? Or if there are things that maybe don't reach that level, then do we lose their attention and they start to gravitate towards some of those other things? So it's a healthy balance of what do we need to maybe filter, block, teachable moments between also then challenging ourselves in our classrooms to say, hey, we need to provide a high-level experience here as well so students are engaged and want to be doing what we're asking them to do in class. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach you have to take with some of that.
I'm sure it's the details in your curriculums as well that would help everybody prepare for maybe situations like as such.
Sure, and there's required things, that we need to teach, and an important piece of that when we talk about students is digital citizenship, and if we deal with poor behavior on social media from students, or we see poor behavior from adults on social media all the time, is when we have those types of things, those are incorporated into a digital citizenship curriculum where we can be talking about what appropriate etiquette on online behavior looks like. We talk about appropriate etiquette in our hallways or our lunchrooms. Well, this is another forum we need to be talking to kids about now. So within that curriculum, but then also just extensions into our curriculum that allow kids, I think, to see connections from maybe a text you've looked at in the past to now, okay, well, how are we reacting to that if it's presented to us on the web? And is that a legitimate source? So that goes back to evaluating sources and reliable content, or are we only reading a pretty biased narrative of something here? So I think there's a lot of different applications on that end as well.
And how the curriculum is being decided now?
So the curriculum right now, Iowa had first committed to the Iowa core curriculum and then has become a common core curriculum states, so that's right now where a lot of our standards are driven from. We've recently in the district talked a lot about the next generation science standards and done a science curriculum review and adopted a new program of studies here at the last board meeting to address that curriculum. So right now there's been some kind of external pressure where Iowa had been traditional local control state, when the last 10 to 15 years during my time in education, that's really shifted now towards a model that's probably built some more consistency between states in the nation, and especially for Iowa, coming all the way from the local decision-making model where school boards would determine what the important curriculum were, all the way now to, a more common core consortium model.
Well, as we, whatever our viewers belong to philosophically, or us here, whatever we believe in, there is no doubt that the next step now, or the expectations, that the Common Core is going to go, is going to die. So we, some of us like it, and some of us think it is very negative and it has a lot of side effects. Now, if or when, maybe when is a better verb here, if this Common Core is gone, are you ready as a district with another plan to jump in?
Sure. And I'm going to take it a little more broad
Right.
than that, and then maybe get back
Yes.
to the original question you asked, Connie. But I think part of what we're seeing in the national conversation and even in our state level politic about education is, from a public education standpoint, we really need to recommit to that this is America's promise, that education is the foundation of America's democracy. In some ways, I think we've failed to tell that story or failed to tell that message. And, it's been onslaught from the national level. It's been onslaught at the state level. When you look at the legislature in Iowa, there's a great majority of those people that homeschool their students, which is a choice every family can certainly make. But I think in some regard, we have to first establish that education is that foundation, and that public schools are the ends to the means, or the means to the end, as far as the solution goes for our kids. So whatever happens with a curriculum, I think the broader conversation we need to have is reestablishing that importance of American public schools. We can't get into a situation where we devolve into a system of charters and haves and have-nots, because that will not be good for the bulk of our kids in American society. So from that perspective, that makes me a little bit nervous. Now, from a national curriculum perspective, I still think Iowa has good things in place. I think the Iowa City Community School District is well structured with vast knowledge with our curriculum coordinators. Our board is heavily involved in wanting to make sure we have a solid curriculum that prepares our students for that 21st century piece I was talking about and beyond. So I think we have some structures and systems in place that will definitely allow us to address any changes in a Common Core approach or even an Iowa Core approach.
And can you tell us a little bit about the 4 C's?
Sure, and that kind of ties back to some of those original conversations we were talking about. So really at the center of this 21st century learning plan or a digital transformation or anything you take on with the district goes back to those skills. And the skills of the 4 C's are what we measure a lot of those things on, and they're communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity for students. And so when we look at those 4 areas, that's our constant measuring to say, how are we doing those things along with everything else we're trying to do it? So if it's the Common Core state standards, that's great, but how are those things woven in there as well? Because we know those are those softer skills that students are going to need to be successful. And they're harder to measure, they're harder to quantify, but at the same time, they're vastly important, and those are things that we have to have students do. So when we look at those 4 C's being at the center of our work, and then we start looking at, are we giving opportunities for those makerspace opportunities? Are we giving students the access and the type of environment they need to have available? Are we providing teachers the professional development and the opportunities for them to be able to address those skills in their classrooms and prepare for a different type of classroom environment than maybe they would have been set up with before? Also computer science and coding, some people push that should be another language now because we have such a high demand for that. So there's a lot of different prongs and ways we could try to attack that. Oh, digital citizenship was the other one that was running through my head there as we talked about that. So a lot of those different pieces feed into those 4 C's, but those are really the skills that when we think critically about what our students need to be successful, we have to be making sure we're preparing them to walk out of our doors with those skills.
One of the my personal main concerns is the fact that with Common Core that teachers are obliged somehow to prepare students for the test. And instead of really developing their critical thinking and ability to problem solving and creative thinking, the teachers are teaching for the test or teaching the test. And there is no way to escape the fact that they have to take a national standardized test. And this is a very negative part of the Common Core. Are you still going to evaluate kids according to the national achievement on the national tests?
Sure, and some of those requirements come to us either from the national government or from the state in particular about what we have to do. I think the one positive thing we've maybe seen about the federal conversation on standardized testing or the Common Core is a move away from that stick approach to if you didn't do this score, then this happens to you.
Right.
You know, I think we know that those consequences or those punitive measures don't work in education. You know, those pressures or that competition, you know, when I'm talking about charter schools, those things may drive results in business, but they don't drive results in education. You know, we serve every kid that walks through our door, you know, whatever their starting point is. So as we move away from some of those consequence and punitive approaches, I think that'll have better results. The one nice thing that Iowa has done is somewhat been insulated from some of those pressures. We haven't seen some of those same punitive reactions that some other states have seen. However, you know, we've recently had a conversation about third grade retention in the state. The governor's since kind of backed away from what some of that may look like, or maybe some alternative ways to demonstrate proficiency. So I hope our conversation keeps focused on the learning and not on the what happens to you if you don't learn. You know, the what happens to you if you don't learn should be, well, we try to provide more support, more things like more intervention rather than give you consequences, because we have a tremendous amount of committed professionals in our classrooms that are doing the best job they can every day, and adding consequences onto that is not going to change or give us better results. So I think as long as we can keep the conversation focused there, the better off we'll be. We don't like to go down that road. You know, we, again, for all those same reasons I said, we feel like, you know, if there was a better way to do it, we would certainly be doing it. You know, that's the thing for us. And do we need to continue to look for those and continue to try to improve our practice? Of course we do. But at the same time, just because you give us a penalty, you know, taking away funding or remove people from their jobs, those are not things that are going to lead to results.
Well, you want to ask a question or shall I proceed?
Proceed.
Now, in the reign of Steve Merrily and you and the other two leaders of the district, we have noticed that you were very successful in the policy of diversification of the staff. Now we see a lot of women, a lot of minority recruits. And I think this is extremely positive, because if you look at the faces of the leadership just 2 or 3, 4 years ago, it's very different now. Mm-hmm. And let me first congratulate you for the success that you achieved in this area. But let us go back to the classroom teacher. And here, this didn't I didn't see real achievement in this field.
Sure.
I mean, all the leaders, the principals, associate principals, and so forth are among the diversity, and they look like America. But the teachers are mostly homogeneous and mostly white. Is that, you think this problem, I know that you had problem of retention of minority teachers before. Is that problem still continuing here? I mean, you hire them, but they leave soon. They don't stay.
And I'm not sure I can speak as much to the retention piece, Hani, as I can just the challenge of creating, you know, a diverse
Right.
teaching workforce. Really is, you know, those numbers are reflective in teacher education programs, that they're not very reflective of society either. So
Right.
we know
That's correct.
when people graduate from those teacher ed programs, that's who we're in the, that's who's in the job market. So that's who we're selecting from. Iowa in particular really struggles with that. So I know Director Botchway and some of his work has really tried to expand our network, that we're looking outside of the state of Iowa to try to draw people into the teaching profession. Also part of the, I think, challenge for teachers that are of a diverse background is they get leadership opportunities for the same challenges we have, is try to make the leadership look more reflective. So there's some opportunities for them to proceed. But I think at the same time we have to do probably some things on the front end in our local community to say, can we do some pieces with a Grow Your Own program? We have great kids, we have great para-educators that would possibly follow this route. So we're looking at some opportunities to try to do that in a homegrown approach almost, where we say, okay, these are some people we could target early on that would be great for our kids and great to keep in our system long term. So those are some of the plans I think we'd like to keep in motion there. I know I've personally benefited, again, when we go back to our opening conversation tonight and talk about the adults that have been in there. I've worked for different female leaders and learned tremendously from them. I've worked for a man from a diverse background, his Mexican-American heritage, and learned skills from him that I probably would not have seen if every one of my experiences had been to work with the same 48 people I graduated high school with. That's where I know I had to grow and where I had to learn. And so we need to provide that same opportunity for our students in the Iowa City schools, is that they're not only learning from people different than them, but also seeing some similar faces so they believe they can also follow that same route.
Matt, it has been a real great opportunity having you tonight.
Thank you.
Do you have any final comment? Do you want to add something, or you would like to talk to our viewer about something?
I think
that
we
missed.
to go Bears before we go. I think I might have got her talked into that, but no, I just thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening, and really enjoyed the time chatting, and look forward to coming back again.
Well, this program, as probably our viewers know, would be on Channel 18, that's Public Access TV channel, and on Public Access TV website on your computer, as well as on Channel 21, that's your education channel. And of course, as usual, we have our YouTube channel too, so probably tomorrow people can watch this. If they have missed tonight, they can watch tomorrow on YouTube in 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours. We are on YouTube. This, of course, production, we have to give credit to Public Access TV for their collaboration and their help and their support. I want to thank my co-host here, and I want to thank the school district, and to our viewers, have a very good night, and thank you very much for listening.